at times I see a little bit of strange humor in the fact that the world that we live in sometimes will reflect that they're against human trafficking, debt slavery or anything like that. But the whole system of legal assumption of a title it's a voluntary slavery, but it's still involved in what we would call not mankind, but they're doing human trafficking. It's a word that relates to something that is lower than a man or a woman. It's now it's a human, and we've adopted this into the vocabulary so that we get used to doing it, just as they did with the natives when they got them used to using the term now Aboriginal versus originals. A native is an original, an ab being a prefix to, just like abnormal would be not normal, so Aboriginal would be not original. So when we talk about human trafficking, it's interesting. It's all involved in legal debt, commercial bondage, and we're just doing a little bit of research under debt bondage, and the definitions that came up, of course, said debt bondage is also known as debt slavery, bonded labor, or peonage, is the pledge of a person's services as security for the repayment for a debt or other obligation. Now, we certainly couldn't come any closer to the understanding of this other than what happened on this, which led to the birth certificate, because you were induced into being a surety to pledge your life and your time over a security instrument that you would actually be the surety for. So even though it may be voluntary in its connection to our behavior in it under lack of knowledge and ignorance, but it is still very much debt bondage because you're being the surety for it, whether voluntary or not. So it says debt bondage is also known as debt slavery, bonded labor. Peonage is the pledge of a person's services as security for repayment for debt or other obligation. Where the terms of the repayment are not clearly or reasonably stated, the person who holds the debt has thus some control over the laborer. Welcome to the Social Security program and its insurance control over that security and the fact that you sign up to it in a contract. And it says whose freedom depends on the undefined debt repayment. I love that they put it's an undefined debt repayment. The services required to repay the debt may be undefined, and the service's duration may be undefined, thus allowing the person supposedly owed the debt to demand services indefinitely. Debt bondage can be passed on from generation to generation. Well, it says that we would repeat the errors of our forefathers when we don't have the knowledge of God and we've strayed from it. So we can understand that debt bondage definitely makes sense right now. But it's amazing that they'll just put this into a definition and seem to feel that most people would never see this nor actually comprehend what's going on that. Now we go to Peon. I always say at that point that's when they really pee on you, and hopefully you don't get pissed off by me telling you this. But the peon comes from the Spanish pronunciation, usually refers to a person, subject, or peonage, any form of wage labor, financial exploitation, coercive economic practice or policy in which the victim or laborer, peon, has little control over employment or economic conditions. If you haven't seen that over the last 2 years, you weren't looking very closely, because they shut down all the control of those that they were peeing on when the system of those who control the legal title were actually going after those with assumed position over the title, the legal surname, and therefore cut off their trade and commerce and just said, sorry, you're not going to be operating for a while, and we're just going to make up whatever we want to say is the reason for it. So we're not going to get into the words that will lead to the video being shut down, but I think you can understand what has gone on over the last 2 years. So therefore, the people that were operating as laborers within this system were definitely the peons. In the movie, John Doe called them helots. But there's different versions. The Romans called them plebeians, the commoners, and so the control factor over the title that they bear is not theirs, and therefore they're at the mercy of those who master this control over this title. So literally controlling them on nothing more than a devilish spell. So the whole world is really being controlled by an evil spell of the evil one, which is Satan, under these legal titles.